some interesting things when they decide to update their app, and the way live tends to start is one of those things that they change from time to time. So every single time I start a live stream, it's like something a little bit different. But we're up and going, and obviously it'll take a few minutes for people to jump in. But as you can see, I'm playing around with a couple of different lights now to try to add a little bit more clarity and a little bit more detail to the camera. I had a vlogging light, and obviously right now I'm kind of like hunched over looking at the camera. I'm not in an office setting, which is what I intend to kind of move to when I do these. But we've got some lights set up, as you can probably see in the reflection of my eyes, and they're higher than they were when I started because originally they were behind the camera, and I looked like a replicant from Blade Runner, which, like, there's like a, depending on who you ask, because a bunch of people argue about this, but basically a lot of the shots of the replicants in Blade Runners, you can see like the lights around the pupil of their eyes, and that's what I look like. So we got some people hopping on here. So JudeMan820 says, "What's good, wildlife?" At the moment, I'm thinking my hair is looking all right. This jacket, that's one thing that I'm not ashamed to say looks really good. But anyway, it's cold outside again, apparently. So I'm wearing cold weather clothes again after it was like 80 degrees a few days ago. Jude the Fortnite King says, "Yo, what's up?" Mark Whiteworth Fishing, "Did you move?" No, I did not move. In fact, I almost never move from the spot when I do live streams, as attested to by that painting behind my head. I did change the lighting in here a little bit. There's a professional light set up behind the camera now that I didn't have before, and I've got some background lights on that I don't normally have. You'll notice there's a green tint on the wall behind me. That is artificial lighting. Some things that I'm playing around with. I'm probably going to end up getting some more professional light setups to try to make this a little bit better when I do it, and I do intend to change the location to a more professional setting. I don't yet have a microphone that I'm using due to some issues with the phone that I tend to do these recordings on, but that is another step that we're looking at. JudeMan820 says, "I'm fishing at my neighborhood right now." Well, I hope you catch something. Let me know what you're going for, and let me know what you get, if you get anything, because sometimes that's been my deal recently. Sometimes you don't. No shame in that, though. Alexo says, "What's up, brother? Looking healthy?" Well, physically, you know what? No. I was going to say physically maybe, but no. So I'm not going to get into a lot of mental health stuff, which is an issue that every single one of you has someone in your life, whether they're open about it or not, who has tremendous mental health issues. So always be more ginger with people than you think you need to be when things start getting stressful. So I'm not going to talk about that. But as far as my physical health goes, my back is all kinds of jacked up right now. And part of this happened the other day. I hurt my back years and years ago. I tell the story all the time because the injury lingers and it affects what I'm doing. So every time I'm talking about it, I say, "Oh yeah, years ago I caught a stingray and it hurt my back." But the injury has persisted for years, and the other day I was hiking to a spot on the river, and there's, depending on what river you're talking about, is the Brazos. I'm not gonna lie about where I was. This is actually an area I don't think I've ever put on the YouTube channel before. But if you look at it from Google Maps, or if you've been there, you know that the sloping banks are basically cutaway leftovers from when it floods. So you end up with these very steep, kind of like ravines. And the ground went out from under me when I was at the top of one of them. And I went all the way down to the bottom into the flooding Brazos River. And actually got carried away by the current for a minute and ended up having to swim out of it. And it was terrifying. And the reason I'm bringing this up to talk about my back is because when the ground went out from under my feet, I was wearing a backpack, and I landed on my back, like on the slope, on my backpack before I went the rest of the way in. So my back is killing me right now. So I might be looking healthy, but I sure ain't feeling it. Let's see. James Harrison says, "Howdy from Raymondville, Texas." I'm not sure what Raymondville is, actually. And I have Google Maps up all the time. Let me type in Raymondville and figure out where that is. Raymondville, Texas. You are, whoa, way down south from where I am. And you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from Mexico there. Really close to South Padre Island, though. I would imagine you have a hell of a time doing saltwater fishing down there. Howdy from Cypress, Texas. Jude Man 820, you're in Cypress. I go to Cypress occasionally. It seems so close, but it always ends up being such a drive to get there because I'm usually going up Highway 6, and Highway 6 is just like stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. So any amount of driving on Highway 6 can be a nightmare, and that's the way Highway 6, and then depending on what part of Cyprus I'm going to, you might take a freeway. But yeah, it's not fun to drive, I can tell you that. So when I do go to Cyprus, it feels like I'm going to the other side of the country. Noah the Bass Catching Machine says, hey, wildlife, what's up? Christian Charbonneau says, Peixeira, which I'm assuming is Portuguese? Peixe, for fish in a lot of languages. Piche is there some kind of variety of that word in a variety of languages that translates out to fish. So either I'm assuming that probably says fish or fishing or fisherman or something of that nature. Stephen Young says, what's up, man? When is my next GAR adventure? I am desperately working on that. That's what I was doing when I hurt myself the other day and ended up nearly drowning, which was really scary. Really scary. I'm laughing about it now, but man, when I got out of the water, I had to cut the camera because I was having a little bit of a breakdown. Because it is one thing to talk about the dangers of what you do, and then when they're like in your face saying, actually, this might be your time, it messes with you a little bit. It really does. So the GAR adventure is ongoing. I have about, Lord willing, God help me, I have about 2/3 of that film done. I've been to a bunch of different spots filming this very large film, and because of the weather, I haven't been able to get one to bite yet. It's insane. I was looking at one the other day, and I'm not going to say exactly where I was, but I was looking at one the other day. It was coming up and down, and for the life of me, he wouldn't take the bait. He must have been 7 feet long. It. Massive animal. Just could not get it to take the bait for the life of me. Anyway, so we're working on the GAR fishing. This is a bad time of year for it. Mark Whitworth Fishing says, did you move out of Houston? I thought I heard you moving. How would you hear me moving? No, I'm not moving. Now I'm wondering if you're, I don't know, like a neighbor, or if you're just spying on me. No, I'm not moving out of Houston right now. Why would you think that? I'm kind of curious as to why you said I thought I heard you moving. Maybe you mean to write you thought I heard that I was moving. But no, I'm not moving. Not right now, anyway. I've probably talked about wanting to. I've talked on occasion about my lifelong desire to go to Australia, which is, it sounds like I'm just kind of like talking big and joking and saying like, oh yeah, one day I want to go here. That's always been something I desperately wanted out of my life. And man, like if I could just go right now, I would drop everything and go. I would change my career and go. If I could get to Australia and live there, I want that for my life so bad. But there are just so many things in a person's life that occasionally make a big move like that not the best tactical decision in your life. So at the moment, we're still in Houston. Dan Mack says, where did I get that jacket? It looks nice. Oh, it was a gift, and I'm pretty sure it came from a Cavender's Boot City, or like a boot barn. It was like a Western wear store. Space City Studio 3 says, favorite fishing lure? I always end up going back to lipless crankbaits. I don't like that they're not the hooks are not wired through the bait unless you modify it yourself. And that always bothers me because you can catch tremendously big fish on those lures and they'll pull the hooks out unless you've modified it. But as far as like the number of fish you can use that lure to catch, they're kind of just, apart from soft plastics, they're kind of unrivaled. So I'm going to go lipless crankbait. Let's see. Second Excite Toad says, "Hi Peyton, let's fish soon, bro. I'm 1000% ready." So yeah, absolutely. The photography for the stuff we were planning, I was going to use a drone for it, and my drone decided mid-flight that its GPS chip was going to stop working. And this is an expensive drone, mind you. And what that does is, if you ever wonder when a drone flies, how it stays in place, despite the fact that there's wind blowing on it and everything, it's because it knows where it is. The GPS system knows where it is, and it keeps it in place until you command it to move. And when that chip goes out, any acting force, or when that program goes out, I don't know if it's a physical chip, any acting force on the drone is going to move it. And a big gust of wind just said, you know what? Nope. And crashed that drone and just tore the propellers to pieces, and one of the rotors is broken. So I have to figure out if that GPS system is gonna be running, and then I have to decide if it's worth the money to fix that drone. That is one of the things that I was gonna write you about, is that a lot of the photography that I was gonna try to use for those episodes that we were planning, I was gonna try to use that drone for. So I'm strategizing right now, if I need to fix that drone, or if I need to buy a new drone, or how I'm going to do it. It was a lot of expensive gear down the drain, and it threw off a lot of the planning I had done for this YouTube channel for this month. And I think last month, because it happened last month, I was going to do a lot of saltwater fishing, a lot of shark fishing and stuff like that, a lot of surf fishing. And I was going to use that drone because it's a bait dropping drone. And it just, it's not an option for me anymore. And you can't really surf cast in South Texas, not to great effect. There are guys who do it, but it's just not something that is, when you're playing the odds game of will I have a film at the end of this day, you need to have your chances a little bit higher when you start out. And if you're not from Texas, if you are, you know exactly what I'm going to say. But if you're not from Texas, when you go to the beach, the water, let's say this is the bank, and let's say right here is where the water starts, and this is the ocean out this way. So you're on the beach over here, and you walk into the water. And a lot of beaches, you walk in, and it starts getting deep real fast. And like in Florida, when I go to Pensacola, like I wade out into the water, and I wade out 50 feet, and I'm, already having to jump up off the bottom to keep my head above the water. If that, it gets deep so fast, you can cast from the shore and catch a decent sized shark like that in Florida. In Texas, you can walk for 100 yards and barely get that water up to your chest. Like barely. It's incredibly frustrating. So you can cast as far as you want, and for most of the Texas coast, except for maybe certain parts of the coast way down south, you're not going to get that bait far enough out there to catch any of the fish worth catching for the videos I'm trying to make. So yeah, not having a drone is kind of frustrating. Trug Dug Fishing says, "What state, Jude? Do you mean what state, dude? Like what state am I in? Texas." Dan Ben says, "Greetings from South Carolina. Loving the videos. Keep it up. I appreciate it. I recognize your avatar when you comment, because you comment and support the channel quite a lot. So I appreciate the support here as well." Oh no, you're asking, you're saying what state, Jude, as in Jude Man 820 down there. You're not misspelling a word. You're actually talking to someone named Jude, and he's answering you. Texas. Johnny Random says, "What's up from Albuquerque, New Mexico?" I actually wanted to go to New Mexico. I say wanted. I still want to go to New Mexico. There's actually there's a lake out that way that I want to fish really bad, and hopefully, honestly, I was told by people who know that the lake I want to fish will be more productive when it gets warmer. So probably not going to head out that way till the summer. But I do want to go up to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Also, I want to go to White Sands, New Mexico, just because I want to see where, what was it called? The most famous scientific project in American history that they just made a movie about that won the Oscar. Um, Manhattan Project. That's where that all took place. Climate says, "Hey Peyton, what's up, man?" Let's see. James Harrison says, "Come and fish Port Mansfield." I might, and that is a good segue into if you're watching this. I put out a post on YouTube, not a video, but a post, like an actual written post. I'm doing a video right now. I'm in the planning stage of a video that I'm going to film. And I'm going to accept suggestions, and you can suggest them in my email so you don't have to, blow up spots to the world. Wildlifefishing@gmail.com. Wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. That's what it is. Wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com is my email. You can put it there. You can put it in the comments here. But basically, if you have a spot you want to see me fish, this does not have to be your spot. I can see people, the gears turning in some people's minds right now, thinking, "Oh, he's trying to find other people's fishing spots." I'm not. I probably already know where your spots are, actually. But what I'm trying to do is, if you have ever seen a spot on a map, or you've heard about a spot, or a friend of yours fished somewhere, or there's a rumor about a spot, and you're like, "You know what? I would love to see wildlife go and try to fish there and make a video there." Send me that spot, whether it's a park name, like if you have the lake, like it's just a general lake. If you have actual coordinates, like I think there's good fish here, I want to see you try and do it. Use me as a test subject, basically, like, see if I can get something out of there and make it worth your while. But send me those locations either to my email, wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com, or the comments here. And I'm going to take all the suggestions I get from people. I'm going to pick the top 3 locations, because one location is going to equal at least one full day for me of fishing. So I can't do like 20. And I'm going to put them all in a film, and I'm going to like be specific. This is the location that so-and-so sent me. This is the location that's another person sent me. And I'm not sure yet how I want to do the format of either hiding or saying where I am. I'm not sure. I'm going to go one of those 2 routes. I know they're exactly opposite, but I don't know which one I'm going to do yet. I don't know if it'll be this one where I show up at a spot and I'm going to go, "This person sent me this location," and then not say where it is, and then go about trying to fish it and see if it's good, and basically kind of do what I do on Patreon, but in an actual public format YouTube video, where I explore the area, fish it, figure out what works, figure out where all the snags are, figure out where the fish are, figure out what they want. I'm either going to do it that way, or I'm going to say the opposite route. Like, so-and-so sent me this location. Here's where it is. If you want to come fish there, I'm going to see if I can make it work. I don't know which of those 2 I'm going to do, but if you want to do this, there's a couple of benefits. Number one, you can basically use me as a test to see if there's a good spot you should go to later. A lot of the times we have our eyes on a spot and we're like, "God, I wish I just knew if there were fish in there before I make the trek out that way," right? This is your chance to get me to do it for you. And to actually be able to see it, right? That's the thing. If you just had a friend go fish this for you and weren't filming anything, that's one thing. But with me, you're going to see everything. It's going to be on video, and it's going to be on video edited well. So there's a chance for you to do that. There's also the chance for you to, because remember, I'm going to pick the ones that I think, especially if I start getting multiple suggestions for the same area, and it has to be a specific area. Let me make this very clear. If I get a bunch of people saying, "I want to know where you are in this video," that I'm not going to do. But if enough people send me a location, like a coordinate or a park, and it just so happens to be a spot I've already filmed in, and maybe you were suspicious the whole time, like, "You know what? I think I know where he is. I'm going to send him the coordinates of where I think he was." If I get enough of those, I'll do that for that area too. And then you might put 2 and 2 together and be like, "Ah, that is where he was." So yeah, it's something I'm working on. Send me your suggestions. I'm gonna make a video entirely about fishing locations. I'm gonna do another one on how to find a spot too, which is a video that I've seen a few people do, but I've never really been impressed with anyone's video that they've done on that. You can kind of tell people are holding back when they make those videos. So I'm gonna try to do one that details my thought process and practice on how I find fishing spots. But send me suggestions, and they're going to go into that project. And it might take It might take a little bit to do. I'll try to get it out sooner rather than later. But remember, for example, if you sent me a spot and you're like, I think there's alligator gar in here. If I went and fished it right now, it's like 40 degrees outside and a cold front came in yesterday, even me fishing in a spot that's good might not get you anything. So it could be a deceptive look if I go too hastily, right? You'd want me to wait until the optimal time to see if that spot is good. So yeah, it's gonna depending on what spots I pick and what I'm going for. So send me a spot and send me the species that you're interested in that location, because I can only carry so much gear with me, right? I can only take so many things. So if you were thinking like, oh, I think this is a great carp spot, and I ended up going for catfish, you might not get what you want out of it. So add location and species. And if I get enough of the same suggestions, those will be the ones that make it on to the video. Let's see here. Bill Clement says, you putting up with us again? Thanks. I find it the other way around. You guys can just leave anytime. Y'all are putting up with me, which I appreciate. Steve Thumb says, you... Hang on a second. I think there's... Yeah, there's hair on the... There's a hair on the screen. I couldn't tell if my screen was cracked. There was a hair, but it's gone now. You, do I still use my email, wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com? Yes, that wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. Yeah, that's the right one. Send me that email. And remember, put the title in like bold, like, or, you know, all caps, like, make it so that where I'll notice it, like fishing spot video suggestion, because I get emails from so many people, and I'll check all the files, like a spam folder, and what's the other one called? Basically, when you get stuff from like businesses or whatever. Yeah, I get hundreds and hundreds of messages a day on Instagram and YouTube and my email, and it's hard to go through and keep track of everything I'm being sent. So make it easy to notice and make it like the title specific to what we're talking about. So when I see it, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, let me look at that. The Loner with Power Tools. That's a good name. Just got to set up with a Penn Senator 9/0. Any spots for surf fishing? Love your vids. Well, I'm in Texas. To me, and again, I'm not the best surf fisherman out there, but to me, once you get into the range on South Texas, basically that Surfside Galveston range, there's not a lot of difference between spots once you get baits a certain distance out. But what I would recommend is try when you get on Galveston Island. So right, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from Surfside, it's going to be the beach on Galveston Island, the first few exits after you go over San Luis Pass. So after you go over the toll booth freeway over the pass, it's going to be on that end of the island, the south end of the island. If you're coming from the freeway up near Houston, you're going to drive down to the south end of the island, and you're going to pull off into one of the free exits. Basically, there's a bunch of neighborhoods that have like private beach access. Then there's a couple of exits that are going to have like public access, and they're going to be like surrounded by like posts that kind of mark your parking area. Get there real early. I find the water conditions there tend to be much flatter if you're like kayaking. The water, remember I was talking about the slope being so shallow in Texas? It is a little deeper there, I think. And I have found that a lot of guys I know, not personally, so I'm not giving up anyone's secret, at least not intentionally, not that's been passed on to me, but a lot of guys who I like run into love that zone for trout, and I personally love that zone for bull sharks. So if you're going out there with a Penn 9/0 and you're going for like bull sharks and stuff like that, or other species of large predator like that, that's a good zone. And by the way, going back to the injury I got on my back, the stingray that I caught that did that was like a 150-pound stingray. I caught him. So if you're looking at the Texas coastline, Texas is up here. This is the ocean. Here's the Texas coastline, and that little gap between my fingers is the San Luis Pass. So Surfside is here, Galveston is here. The spot I'm telling you to go to right now is like right there. And the spot where I caught that stingray is like right there. So that pass is very hard to fish because the current's so strong. And be super careful in that area because people drown there all the time. But on the edges of it on either side is fantastic fishing. But I find the Galveston side, the water conditions are a little bit easier to navigate. They're a little bit, the water gets deeper. I think the water typically tends to be clearer. A lot of the mud that gets washed out of San Luis Pass, I think tends to go, it tends to trap a lot of the mud getting washed out of the Brazos. So basically, again, Galveston, um, Surfside, San Luis Pass right here. The Brazos Delta is down here and puts all this mud into the Gulf. And it starts drifting up this way towards Galveston. And I find that the current from the San Luis Pass tends to stop it from drifting up here into Galveston quite as prevalent. That's why Galveston always seems to get that blue water before Surfside does. Is because I think San Luis Pass kind of like pushes the mud from the Brazos away. So if you want a little bit better water conditions and I think sharkier water conditions, the south end of Galveston has always been good to me. So that's where I would go with a setup like that. Victor Lockett says, howdy from Austin. I've been meaning to go to Austin recently. The carp scene up there is phenomenal. And the scenery is great too, especially if you're filming yourself fishing. There's, the kind of stuff that I like. You have the very scenic looking, water, and then you have this scenic looking city, and then you can get these massive fish out of it. It's really, I'm not sure why I haven't been back already, especially with this weather, because you catch carp in the cold weather. I really need to just go out and do it. Let's see. Dammit says, can't wait to see you go back to Florida and catch that grouper. Here's the thing. I don't know if I want to. And it's not because, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, the chances of landing a grouper out of that spot are pretty low. There are guys who have done it famously out of that spot, but that's how I knew that grouper was going to be in that area. And then a friend of mine was like, this is where you're trying to go. He knew what I was looking for. And he was like, this is where you go. But number one, I caught those black sea bass in California, which are morphologically almost the identical twin of the grouper, right? Except I think they're probably more powerful, and they're probably more powerful when fighting laterally. So side to side, grouper are really an up and down powerhouse. If you can get a grouper swimming out, you have a better chance against it. And if you watch that video where I got smoked by that grouper, there was one moment, because the water there is not that deep. A lot of people were trying to tell me that, no, it's not a grouper, they only swim down. And it's like, it's a ship channel. It ain't 100 feet deep. It's like 15 feet deep, and then that fish has to go sideways. And once that fish got out at distance, you'll notice in that film, there's a moment where I slow him down. Even with that gear that I had no business fishing in a grouper zone with. I managed to slow him down and stop him for a second. And we fought in a standstill. He kind of pulled, and I kind of buckled down and held him for a second. And then he kept going. So if you can get them going side to side, you can overpower them if you have the right gear. But that's the problem, is I don't think I have the right gear. After fighting those black sea bass, one of the things I realized was you really can't cut corners when you're fighting fish of that caliber. You have to have the expensive stuff if you're going to pull it off. And I think that's something I need to have in order before I go back to that spot. I really have to, if I return to that zone, number one, I want to do it in the summer because there's more sharks there in the summer. I ran into some people who are like, yeah, this is a big spot for shark fishermen. But the sharks, they catch big bull sharks in there. They're like, the sharks migrate out of here during the winter months, and that's why it's not crowded right now. Well, they were saying the shark fishermen come in during the summer because that place is stacked in the summer. I didn't see them, but a kid next to me saw some tarpon in there. And then, of course, I got blown up by a grouper. And I really want to return when I have the gear to make it worth my while. And I'm not made of money, so I have to pick and choose the gear that I buy. And I think right now, the expensive equipment that I probably should invest in first is a good photography drone, and we'll go for like I don't even know if I have enough room in the frame to show you. I'll go for like those big like Avid 50 watt, 50-80 size reels with like 200-pound line and stuff. I'll get that later. So I might go back. Just depends, but definitely not until I get some bigger stuff. Space City Studios 3 says, I'm fishing with Jude Man 820 and I caught a yellow bullhead. Cool. Bullhead are cool fish. They bite so like far above their weight. They have, in my opinion, one of the strongest, and I say my opinion because you could actually measure this. This is not something that is up to my opinion. Like, this is actually something you could measure pound for pound. But in my experience, the bite of a bullhead is like so significantly stronger pound for pound than a lot of other fish. I'm trying to think how many fish I've had clamped down on me. How many species? Flathead. I mean, as far as catfish go, all the American catfish, right? With the exception of like the weird species like cave dwelling species and stuff like that. All the classic sporting species I've had get a hold of me and tear me up a little bit. I've had a small, but thank God small. I've had a black-tip shark grab a hold of my thumb. I'm trying to find it out there. It's white lines running down my thumb. It's just cut right through it. I've had those black sea bass. There's a few of them that I lipped, and when I say I lipped, like you lip a bass like this, I grabbed a hold of their like bottom jaw and was like grabbing a hold of an iron bar like this thick. I did one with my bare hands, and it tore my hands to shreds. And I do not regret doing it because I knew what I was about to do. Like, I knew I was sticking my hands in their mouth and I was probably gonna cut up pretty bad. But I wanted that catch so bad. I was like, I am not going to let this fish go, and I need to control it in the surf right now. And I was like, I don't have my gloves, don't care. Boom. So I've had a bunch of fish of size and significant power like clamp onto me. I've been bitten by alligator gar, of course. And I always go back to the bullhead as being the one that's like got the most shockingly powerful bite out of all of them. Johnny Random says, those abandoned water park videos are cool too. Crazy how fish can live pretty much anywhere there is water. Yeah, it's astounding the balance that fish will strike within an ecosystem. You know, I think it's hard for people to wrap their brain around that because we are so clearly the opposite. We expand and expand, and what is the Agent Smith speech? You spread to another area. A virus, Mr. Anderson. Basically, yeah, fish find this incredible balance where their populations thrive in a body of water that literally probably couldn't fit this couch in. Like, if you were to try to shove this couch in there, some of those pools are too small for this. They're tiny, and yet you have these whole populations of fish thriving in there. It's incredible. And that actually brings up an interesting point. I put the link to this in the description of this live stream, so you guys could find it easier. One of the things I said in that video where I went to that abandoned water park, and I think it was the last video I published, people lost their minds because I stated the simple fact that the original study that suggested that fish were ingested by waterfowl as a way of transporting them to and from different water bodies, I stated the fact that the original study had been called into question by the academic community by not providing enough evidence to reach its own conclusion. And that, I think a lot of people got really confused because they thought I was saying there's no merit to that idea. That is not how fish move from place to place. That is not what I said at all. I said there is issues with the paper that first put the idea forward. He's dead now, so he can't sue me. O.J. Simpson. Like, do I think the man's innocent? No, of course not. Do I think there were problems with the presentation of evidence against him? Yeah, I do. I think it was a disaster. Like, You got to understand there's a difference. There's a difference between saying that this idea does not work versus saying the manner in which this idea was originally presented was flawed. Therefore, if we're going to examine this idea, we need to approach it again, and we need to approach it from a more scientifically sound direction. And that is all I was saying. And people had the hardest time wrapping their mind around it. And what I've done is I found a more recent study that was it actually approached it from the direction the original one should have approached it from. So the original study found that killifish, very small fish that you can actually own in aquariums, killifish were documented to be able to move from place to place, ingested and then excreted by waterfowl such as ducks without being destroyed, and then could hatch and reproduce afterwards. And mind you, any one piece of this puzzle is not enough to show the whole puzzle. If I said, yeah, look, I can prove that a duck can swallow this fish egg and the fish egg will survive after being excreted by the duck, that does not prove that is how fish get from place to place. Because you also have to prove the fish is healthy after the other end, that they can still reproduce, that they can come to term. So, like, yes, the egg survive, but can the egg hatch? Will the egg hatch? What are the odds that the egg is going to hatch? That enough eggs, like if a duck eats 1,000 eggs, how many of those eggs will hatch? If it's 1,000 eggs and one egg hatches, and then that egg doesn't even make it, I'm sorry, if the one egg survives and the egg doesn't even make it to term to hatch, that's probably not a very good basis for the theory that that's how that process works. So you have multiple steps when you're presenting a scientific idea like this as the primary method by which you think fish move from point A to point B. There's multiple parts of these theories that you have to demonstrate independently and then demonstrate as a whole before you can, basically say, yeah, we've kind of figured out this is how it works. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think if you see, like, oh, I saw a bird eating eggs, that proves that's how they get from place to place. It's like, no, we don't know the eggs were alive. We don't know the eggs survived. We don't know that they hatched afterwards. We don't know that they were able to reproduce. Like, you have to prove each of those things independently. And this study is the closest, the one I linked in here, is the one that's done the closest amount of this so far. Because killifish are particularly hardy fish when they're like in a larval stage, in an egg stage, in a larval stage. And a lot of other fish like the cyprinids, like carp and things like that. These are the types of fish that you find most commonly in water bodies, right? You find sunfish, you find carp. I'm going to say those two are probably the most common two variety of fish. So establishing that killifish can move from point to point doesn't really explain how bass and other types of sunfish like bluegill and stuff, or the cyprinids like carp and stuff, doesn't really prove how they get to and from one area or another. That was one of the problems of the original study, is that it was like, well, we know this fish can, so we're just going to assume that it works this way for all fish. That's not how science works. That's not how science works. You have to examine the other types in practice, and this study did. And if you read the study, it's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science is where it was published. So very legitimate, peer-reviewed study. And by the way, this is all important. I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, they took carp eggs and they said, okay, we're going to have a duck eat this many carp eggs. And it's going to sound cruel to say it with these terms. Basically, force fed a duck a certain number of carp eggs, and then they observed how long it took for those carp eggs to be passed through their system, how many survived, how many came to term, and how many were able to reproduce. Like, they didn't wait long enough for the fish to grow to be able to reproduce, but they said, like, biologically, this fish has the capability of reproducing still. And the numbers are just, it's like this dramatic funnel. Like, you had this many eggs, this many survived, this many could reproduce. But the idea is that if enough birds are eating enough eggs, which is very common, by the way. Birds love eating fish eggs. Um, the odds that multiple birds will do this and you'll have multiple fish that can breed with each, or I'm sorry, yeah, multiple fish that can breed with each other when they're excreted, this is a viable option for this theory to work. So this study that I've linked in here is the one that is the has done the most proper work to suggest this theory is viable. Now, there's not, I don't want to say there's mistakes in this theory, but there are issues I have with this study that I've linked here. One of them is that the water containment system that they used to study the eggs afterwards, a lot of their eggs died. And they blame it on, in the study, they say, there was probably contamination because our water containment system that we put the eggs in after they survived was too small. And this probably wouldn't happen in the wild. And it's like, okay, we got a lot of the word probably in there. Let's do it again. And this time, mimic the type of body of water it's likely that they're going to, be excreted into. That's one of the things you kind of have to do. You can't say, it's like laboratory science and actual practical science are not always quite the same thing. One suggests the viability of the other. So these eggs that were put in a water containment system that was too small and then were contaminated, like, yeah, that might not have happened in other water bodies, but we should try it. And this is the difference, mind you, between a study proving something and a study suggesting something. That is what studies do. Studies strongly suggest like the puzzle pieces of scientific theories. And you do these studies again and again, and they're peer reviewed, and people examine them and they say, you know what, I have an issue with the way this is done. What if we did it this way instead? And after you do this over and over and over, you can have enough weight behind a scientific theory to say, you know what, this is probably how it happens. It's a long, tedious process. That is why I get a little bit irked when I talk about the scientific processes by which animals do XYZ, and then some you'll inevitably get in the comments of a video and they'll say, no, I saw it. And it's like, that's not how this works. I literally had somebody in there being like, what do you mean that study got questioned? I've seen birds eat fish eggs. And it's like, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. Were they alive? Do you know they were alive? Did you test them before the bird ate them? Did you follow the bird to make sure they survived after they were excreted? Did they even get excreted into a body of water? Did they hatch? When they hatched, could they reproduce? Did they reproduce? Like, your personal observation of what you assume to be something related to the topic we're discussing is not scientific evidence. That's one of the things that has been like an issue I've run into the most on this channel, is trying to get people to understand that your personal observation is not scientific evidence. It is only your personal observation, and half the time people can't even provide the information necessary to put weight behind it. And if you're going to use your personal observation as supposed evidence in a scientific discussion, you have to be able to put scientific weight behind it. You can't say, well, I saw it and I'm pretty sure this is how it happens. Like, the moment you refuse to back up your observation with the necessary like scientific observations, or the scientific steps to lend weight to it, the moment you refuse to do that, your opinion is not interesting to me in the scientific discussion anymore. So yeah, if you read that study, read it step by step by step by step, and you will, if you don't already know, you will see the process by which scientific theories are established is enormously long and painstaking and tedious. And peer review is the thing I said I was going to talk about a little bit. Peer review is so important because what that means is that basically you have other experts in the field, preferably who are more experienced than you, looking at your work and saying, okay, but what about this? I have an issue with this. Tell me why this works. Show me why this works, because I can see a problem here or there. And then you say, okay, let's run it again. This is why this works. When you guys get like when you go through a doctorate program and you have your thesis, and you'll hear people say this, they'll say, I defended my thesis, or you have to do a defense of your thesis. What that means is basically you have to defend all the little like nooks and crannies of your scientific proposition against like educated scientific critiques. And if your thesis can't withstand that, then it isn't something that's going to be published as a scientific theory. Like, if it's sound, it won't be dismantled. So, yeah, I wish more people understood the process by which science is different than your personal observation. But yeah, when I went to that park in Louisiana, that is something I said. I wasn't even saying the theory was bad. I was just saying the original study got called into question, which it did, and people were freaking out. Let's see. TNF says, if you put a fish in a kiddie pool the night before the recent freeze, you would have been the first to ice to ice fish in Houston. Trying to think. Yeah, I mean, unless there was some kind of artificial body of water that froze over with fish in it, I'm having trouble recalling water ever really truly freezing in Texas. I remember as a kid when it got freezing cold in the winter, we had these ditches outside. And the ditches, this was down in Angleton, the ditches would freeze over. They would ice over, and there would be like crayfish in them and stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to bet you if you were to go further north, you could probably find larger bodies of water that got some thin ice on them during this freeze. I don't know. Maybe it takes longer than a flash freeze for that to happen. Mini pro fisherman. This is Professor Fisherman. Mini pro fisherman says, "What is the best shark fishing method? The one that works." And that is going to vary from fish to fish. So it depends entirely on, and this is true of any fish, what you're trying to catch. So species, location, condition, and condition can change, which can have an effect on both of those other two things. So the manner in which you would catch, a mako shark from the beach, if you were going to do that, for example, would differ dramatically from how you would catch a blacktip shark from the beach. So there is no best method of doing anything, let alone fishing for sharks. It depends entirely on what you're doing and where you're doing it from. But some basics that are kind of like principles that are always true. Fresh bait is better than frozen bait. Get bait that is specific to the diet of the shark you want. So certain sharks like to eat other types of animals more than others. So if you know what kind of shark you're going for, yes, this is going to be the bait they're after this time of year. Get that bait, get it fresh. That's a principle that's pretty much always true in fishing. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a principle. So things like that. Make sure your gear can withstand the biggest specimen that you are likely to encounter. So that's an important thing. Like when I go surf casting, I don't need to have the world's strongest rod and reel because the odds of me encountering anything over 6 feet surf casting in Texas are pretty low. But if I went somewhere where casting from the beach was likely to hook me into something that weighed a couple 100 pounds, I would have to adapt my gear. So make sure your gear is suited for the biggest fish you are likely to encounter. Fresh bait is better than frozen bait. Bait that is specific to the fish you want is better than random bait. Those things are always true. And then other principles would be things like just obsessive attention to detail. Your knots need to be perfect. Your line needs to be perfect. No nicks, no sand in the line. If you've been fishing with the same line for a while, replace it. The last thing you want is to have line that is wearing out when you have the shark of a lifetime on the other end, because they'll break it. They absolutely will. And don't go alone, especially if you're going for larger sharks. Make sure that you have someone there to assist you. All right, Logan Durant says, am I taking suggestions right now for spots to try? I am, because I have to take as many suggestions as people want to send. and then pick out of those which ones either get recommended the most or I think are going to be, the most productive on video or the most interesting to look at. Um, you don't have to say it here. You can send it to my email, wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. That way, if a spot is something that you are, you don't want to blast out on YouTube like this, send it there. Because remember, I still haven't decided on the format of the video yet. And by the way, guys, if you are really, 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 what's the word? Particular, and this is fine because I am too. If you're particular about a spot, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to send a spot. If you're going to keep it a secret, show the spot. But if you're going to say where it is, I don't want the spot on the video. Just say that in the email, and I'll honor that. If you send me a spot and you're like, yes, YouTube is fine as long as you don't say where it is. If I go with that format of the video, I might use your spot and be like, I won't tell you where I am, but it was sent to me by so and so. So and so, here's your spot. Let's see what it's like. Um, and if you're like, please, if you go with the other route, do not say where this is, I won't use that spot. Bill Clement says, I haven't checked. Do you have a wildlife store? I want a sticker for my toolbox and tackle box. No, I don't have a wildlife store. Sorry, my back is killing me. Ouch. At the moment. I should get onto that though. Stickers would be cool. I also have I thought it was over here. I don't see it right now. I have a fidget toy that I think it was my mother gave to me. That is it's like one of those magnets. It's like two magnetic discs that you can like flip around each other in your hand, and they're coated in leather, and they have my YouTube channel emblem, like the channel name, like inscribed across the leather, like it's burnt in. I thought about like getting some of those to give out. Victor Lockett says, get the DJI Care next time. You live a wild life, you will break more drones. Who? I don't think it was DJI that I got this from. What? Swell Pro. That's what it was. It was a Swell Pro drone. So yeah, no. If I get a drone, I should probably get the warranty package on it next time. The Bass Sicario says, "What's up, bro? What's up, bro? Not too much at the moment. Just trying out some new lighting. This lights, I think it's working well. I think it's working well. That name I can never pronounce. Hey, how are you? How have you in the fishing been? When are you going for gar? I keep getting that question. Really bad weather right now for alligator gar. I've been trying over the past couple of weeks to put a very big film out there on alligator gar. I've got like a good amount of it filmed. I just can't get the star to show up. And when I will put out that film depends entirely on when I can get them. My dog's down here, by the way. When I can get them to cooperate with me. But yeah, January and February are like the worst time of the year to fish for alligator gar. We're stray too. I'm curious as to that inner black shirt you're wearing. I think I get these from Academy. I don't remember I think it's Magellan. But yeah, this is just the black version. I never wear black on camera because black just eats up detail on camera. Like you step on in frame in black and just everything that's in that shirt, like that whole outline is just like gone to your eye. So you can't really film very well in black. That's why I wear blue all the time. But these are the same shirts that I filmed a good amount of my original YouTube videos in. They're what Spencer Wonder calls my Dexter shirts, which was a good show for like 3 seasons. But yeah, I usually wear these in green and blue. You will have seen me in these in green and blue a number of times. I think they're Magellan. I get them from Academy Sports and Outdoors. They're really comfortable and they're shockingly good at dealing with both the cold and the heat, which seems weird because it's a long sleeve shirt, but they disperse heat pretty well, I think, and they dry pretty fast when they get wet. So I like wearing them when I fish sometimes. Bass Sicario says, come fish Lake Hodges. Send that to me in an email. I'll go back and write suggestions from here down, but send that to me in an email, wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. Especially if you have an area of the lake you want me to fish. Because you got to remember, I'm a primarily shore-based fisherman. Because good chance that I'm not gonna be able to make it out into a boat. Judeman 820 says you should fish at North Lake Forest Pond in Cypress, Texas. North Lake Forest Pond in Cypress, Texas. Again, send it to me in an email, wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. Or if you want to go comment it on the original post I put on my YouTube channel, the original post, comment it there. I'll go back and I'll look for these to find them, because there's a setting you can do when you go back and you watch a live after the fact. You can just pull up the chat as it was happening live. And I'll just get them that way. 17B. Let's see. Logan Durant says Jack Brooks Park, Hitchcock. Seen a couple of. Oh my God. I'm gonna look that up. Hang on a second. Are we talking about the same state? Looking this up right now. Let's pull it up on the maps and see how far away we have to drive to reach it. Huh. I'm having trouble finding where the water is at this park. I see a little pond. I see it's next to a river, but what river is that? Can you see my dog in the corner? Yeah, it's right here. Anyway, I'll look into that. North Lake Forest in Cypress, Texas. Camo Bombo says they're knocking on the walls. I don't know who's knocking on your walls. There's nobody knocking on my walls. Am I on Fishbrain? No, I'm not. Flama says sounds like a fun video. I hope so, if I get it to work. The good thing is I'm not promising anything. The whole point of the video is like, are these spots any good? So that takes some of the pressure off me, because push comes to shove, they don't all have to be perfect, which is one of the things that is so hard for me to do with my normal videos, is that I feel pressure to have to catch stuff. And the videos need to be good, and there needs payoff in them. And I've seen a couple of YouTubers that are just very big names, and they'll do these videos where they're like, I caught the monster, and the thumbnail will be like this like huge piece of bait on a giant circle hook. You already know who I'm talking about. And then you'll watch the video and they won't catch anything. And it's like, how can you let your standards be like that? Like, I understand, I don't know, I understand you got to get content out there. Like, I do this full time. Like, I understand that. But like, you have an obligation to, I don't know, to deliver on promises, I think. Yeah, it drives me insane. The closest I ever got to doing that, I think, was sometimes in the thumbnail, I'll upload a thumbnail with different tackle than what I'm actually using. And a lot of that was just because I had like the one photo that worked really well. And I have since gone back and I bought a fishing rod. I don't think it's over there. I bought a fishing rod specifically for thumbnails where I'm using lighter tackle, so I don't have to Photoshop in like heavier tackle to make it deceptive. That heavier tackle photo that I would Photoshop in, it looks like it's so hard for me to get Photoshop to work well sometimes when it comes to fishing rods, because they're so thin. It's hard to like get it to cut it out. But I've got one now that works perfectly, so I don't need to keep using like the larger tackle for pictures where there's not larger tackle being employed. So I'm trying my best to like deliver on promises I'm making in my videos, and it pisses me off a little bit. It really does when I see other YouTubers who are very clearly just not interested in paying off the suggestion that they make in their videos. And it's like, how do you still have subscribers? Like, how are people still? And you get into the comments and it's always like, that's okay if you didn't catch anything, even though you said you did, and that's why I clicked on the video. You're still awesome. And it's like, if I did that once, people would lose their mind. I had people lose their mind because the great white shark I caught wasn't big enough for them. So, yeah. Anyway, let's keep going. Fish the aquarium. Yeah, Dan Max says fish the aquarium at Bass Pro Shops. I like not being arrested, so we'll skip that one. Although it, if you could get like in with the right people, you could probably, I don't know, at the very least, work out some version of that video. Whether it was like one of their people doing it, you'd have to be basically like some kind of brand ambassador, and you have to use it to promote their stuff. Like, I'm trying to think of a scenario where you could feasibly get that idea to happen on camera. It would have to be entirely them doing it, basically, and you would be kind of just the third wheel. So the odds of getting something like that ever done are close to zero. But believe you me, I have thought about that. G-Man 820 says the North Lake Forest Pond in Cypress, Texas. Okay, a lot of suggestions for Cypress. Space City Studios 3 says 45 degrees and fish are still biting here, and the catfish, like hot dogs in North Lake Forest in Cypress, Texas. Well, sounds pretty good. I need a spot where fish bite 45-degree weather, because it just seems like that is the trampoline we're on. Keeps dipping down to the 40s. Ben Knees. Hey, Wildlife, love your garvids. Have you ever fished in the UK? No, I haven't. Desperately would love to go to the UK, and would absolutely not miss a chance to do some filming while I was over there. Um, so yeah, I absolutely would love to go to the UK eventually. It's just something that hasn't happened yet, but absolutely that is on the list. The Learner with Power Tool says, thank you so much for the recommendations and tips. I'll for sure send some pictures on email if I catch anything. Definitely. The Learner with Power Tools, again. I do take the bait out with the kayak. Yeah. Can't wait to see what I can get. Yeah, that spot should be better for you on a kayak, I think. Just, obviously double and triple check wind speeds and all that kind of stuff. But I find it easier to kayak there than I do in some of the other spots. Also, you don't need to go quite as far as you do in some other spots, which is nice. Flama says, bull sharks are awesome. Yes, they are. They are like the pit bulls of fish. Got a nice wave. And that's me waving back. Benny says, snapping turtle has to be the winner. What's the contest? Are we going back to the animals I was discussing biting and how strong they can bite? Yeah, they're obviously the winner, but I'm talking about fish specifically. I'm not about to let a snapping turtle bite my hand. I'll let it bite a fake hand, but not my real hand. Victor Lockett says, any Austin carp or buffalo fisheries here? Do you mean, are there any fisheries for carp and buffalo like Austin, like you would have in Austin, but down here in Houston? I'm trying to think. There's loads. Houston is absolutely loaded with carp. I'm trying to think of where the biggest ones are. If you are on my Patreon, which if you're interested, there's a link in the description. There is a spot that I have done one of these highlights on that routinely gets, depending on the weather. There are actually two spots I have on there, and each of these spots will routinely get 30 plus pound carp in there in big schools. It's amazing. It looks like you're looking at potted dolphins. So there's a couple of spots with enormous carp in them in Houston. There's a third spot that I haven't done a fishing spot highlight on yet. I went there the other night and had some personal stuff come up and had to abandon that video. But there's a third spot that I'm going to go back to do a special video on for Patreon that has some truly gigantic carp in it. And so, yeah, there are absolutely Austin-sized carp and buffalo here in the Houston area. All of that is on my Patreon, though. And for the sake of, there's two ways you can go about this. For the sake of everyone on Patreon, I'm not going to just say, like, yeah, here it is, because this people supporting me on Patreon would be shortchanged out of that information. But remember, I did say that if you had an idea of a spot you wanted to see, suggest it to me, because it might be that you're like, you know what, I think I know the spot he's talking about. If I can get him to do that one, you can kind of figure out what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like if you think like, oh, in this video where this giant fish was, I think he's here. Suggest that spot, the spot you think it is. And if that ends up being a spot I choose to go to, it will confirm your suspicions about where I was. So that's a avenue as well. But yeah, check out the link to the what do you call it? The Patreon in my description of this live stream. And I've got a couple of locations in there for truly gigantic carp, 30-pound plus carp. And I didn't put my Instagram link in this live. I should have done that. But if you follow me on Instagram, I've got a couple of photos of the carp from those areas, and they're massive. Oh, Tom Bombadil. Oh, snap. How awesome. Love your videos. Keep up the great work inspiring us to get out and fish. Fellow Houstonian here. So it's always exciting to watch you fish the bayous. I appreciate it. I was just thinking the other day, I think I have an issue where I confuse, or have been confusing aesthetics with effort. And one of the things that, because I have a bad habit, I'm a very competitive person, to an unhealthy degree, which, by the way, I unfollowed a bunch of like people in the industry who do the same thing I do, who I know personally from like Instagram and stuff, and it has nothing to do with them. I think they're great, and I think they're awesome people. And I was tired of falling victim to the natural tendency to like think of myself as being like the competitor, and looking at everything they're doing and feeling that burn and being like, I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna do better. I'm better than them. And it's like I can't help that. Like that's just a part of who I am as a person. I want to one up everything. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the people who I genuinely like, if you're ever on your Instagram, you're like, oh yeah, he unfollowed me. That's why. It's not a you thing. It's a me thing. It was for my mental health, not because I think I probably, if you're one of the people I'm talking about, I think you're awesome. But I did it for me. But back onto the original topic, I have a tendency to confuse aesthetics with effort, and there's a lot of people that are very successful in this genre on YouTube who have a much more aesthetically pleasing area or species that they kind of specialize in. You know, you've got the morning tide guys out on like the coasts of Australia, or you've got people doing like all kinds of stuff on the, you know, the coast in or off the coast in Florida, and it's like just gorgeous. Or they're salmon fishing in Oregon or, you know, Washington or whatever, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think one of the things that I was dealing with personally is that I was getting upset thinking that like those, they're not trying harder than me. I was confusing the natural aesthetics of like where they just happen to be with the aesthetics of where I happen to be, which, let's be honest, as much as I think Houston is an incredible place and an amazing environment for animals, it just is not pleasing to the eye. It just isn't. Houston is not social media friendly as far as the environments where I tend to find a lot of these animals from. And that was part of the point in the beginning, was like, you know, people don't know. People don't know that there's giant fish in here or just really cool fish in here. That was like when the channel first got started, Fishing in the City. People had no idea that there were all these amazing animals around them in such a weird spot. And that was kind of the like the premise, and it kind of still continues to be I think the main idea behind the channel is it's a conservation program about specific aquatic species in like really weird urban environments. I think that's kind of what it really comes down to. So like moving to somewhere that has like all these beautiful aesthetics would kind of defeat the whole purpose on one hand. But on the other hand, it is hard not to compare. And I think the giveaway that kind of let me kind of like just snap myself out of it is I started thinking about specifically drone camera shots, which I typically don't use a lot of because I think they're mostly redundant. As a filmmaker, I don't like drones. I think you just end up with a lot of extra footage that a good filmmaker would cut from their final product. But I also am smart enough to recognize that social media likes what social media likes. And there's an example I always go to when I talk about filmmaking, and it's the bullet squib concept. And everyone who knows me has heard me say this at least once or twice. But basically, when you watch a movie and they have realistic like effects of getting shot, and the blood squib explodes, that's not realistic at all, like at all. Most people who end up getting taken out that way, it looks like they've been stung by something and they're running away from it and then they just fall down. Like that's what it actually looks like. Unless you're using like certain calibers, in which case there's almost nothing left. So people are always going like it's either way less than you think or way more than you think, and what people think is realistic is like right in the middle between what is actually realistic. Bullet squibs are not realistic. What you see in the movies doesn't look like that. And people still want that though, right? People expect that. CGI kind of got to be the same way until fairly recently. There was kind of like a revolution in practical effects. But for a while, like CGI, like robots, CGI creatures, you could tell that it was CGI. Whereas if you had a mechanical creature or like a robot, for example, you actually had a practical effect for it or something. Like think about Terminator 2 when he like pulls his arm off and he has like the robot hand when he's convincing Miles Dyson that like he's from the future. Um, a lot of people would see the practical effect and go, "No, that's not realistic." And it's like, "Okay, what do you think is realistic?" And they go, "CGI." And it's like your brain knows that the computer animation is not actually realistic, but you've come to expect, culturally, you've come to accept that that is the standard now that we judge realism by. It's not actually how realistic is it, it's how much of this idea am I getting that I'm expecting. And YouTube videos are very similar. And a lot of people like drone footage does not really communicate a lot of story. It really doesn't. It doesn't show you a whole lot that you actually need to see. It shows you extra. It's B-roll. It's basically the kind of stuff that a good director would cut out of the final cut of their movie because it's the trimmings, it's the extra. But people on YouTube have come to expect that. That is the bullet squib of YouTube in fishing videos. That is what people expect out of their well-made YouTube video, even though I don't think it actually helps at all. The expectation is honestly more important at the end of the day than what is truly good filmmaking. So I am probably reluctantly going to get a drone just so I can appease people. But that brings us back to the original topic, the aesthetics of like a drone shot off the coast of Australia and the aesthetics of a drone shot through the bayous of Houston. One of them is they're both the habitats that the animals that we specialize in live in. And one of those habitats just happens to be a thing that people like to look at on social media, and the other one is not. One of them is honestly kind of ugly. I mean, oh man, if you Google like trashy Bayou Houston, like just Google that phrase, trash Houston water. You'll find some of the most horrible looking photographs of garbage in Houston water. And the bad thing is, it's not anything out of the ordinary. It's just like a normal day. um, yeah. So I unfortunately do a job that is largely aesthetic in an area that lends itself in the opposite direction of social media aesthetics. And I'm trying at the moment to find the balance between those two things. Because on the one hand, one is the reality of where I am, but the other is the reality of what social media wants to promote. And I have to find, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure to find a new balance than what I've been finding. So we'll see how that goes. Bayou Anglers says, what is the best way to catch carp? I'm trying to hook one. Well, first, subscribe to my Patreon because I do a bunch of carp stuff there. But don't overthink it, is what I would say. Carp, especially in Texas, I'm assuming you fish all our bayous because that's in your name. Don't overthink it. They like corn. They like bread. They like a presentation that is, a carp hook, straight mono down to a carp hook, a couple of shot to weight it down. Make sure you pre-bait the area well. There's not much more to it than that. The real key with carp fishing, and this is true no matter how advanced in your carp fishing you are, whether you're using like the newest type of rig in the UK, or you're using just bread and a hook in a bayou in Texas. This part is true. 90% of carp fishing is finding where they like to be before you start fishing. That's the key. Then he says, go fishing. It doesn't have to be an alligator gar. It only has to be a bluegill. Fishing is therapy. Mic drop. Yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place for both, right? It really, really depends. You got to remember, I am kind of playing the role of Don Draper in a way. I'm not just making a product, I'm also trying to be Don Draper, and I'm trying to talk to a million people, and I'm trying to say, like, this is why my product is the one you want. And I have to make people think it was their idea to click on it. I know that was not a John Hamm impression, but just essentially, I'm trying to sell. Trying to sell. And it is easier to sell. If you don't have beautiful place, here's a hierarchy of social media, in case you guys are wondering. And some of this you're born with, some of it you're not, some of it you have to find a way to get. It just is the way it is. Social media likes a couple of things. It likes beautiful people, which I'm not in that category. It likes rich people. I'm not in that category. It likes beautiful places. And that's where we start getting into, like, we just spent the whole, like, last 10 minutes talking about it, so I won't beat a dead horse. So it likes beautiful people. It likes rich people. It likes people in beautiful places. And if those three things are off limits to me, where do I start making up ground? And one of the ways that I have found that I can make up a lot of ground is I catch big fish. I mean, there are videos where I'll go out and I'll catch bluegill. Absolutely. There are videos where I'll go out and I'll catch carp. But then I'll turn around and I'll catch a 150-pound alligator gar, 200-pound alligator gar, pushing 300-pound alligator gar. I'll go catch a great white shark, not on my own, obviously, thanks to Spencer that happened. But the fish that I put on, I'll catch a snapping turtle with a head that big, a 200-pound animal. I'll wrangle out of the mud with my bare hands and a lariat rope, right? So I may not be rich, I may not be beautiful, I don't live in an aesthetic place, but I can catch some pretty extreme animals. I'll wade into the water to go find a big alligator, to pull line off him by hand. I'll risk my life to do that stuff. I do extreme stuff sometimes, and I catch really, really extreme animals on camera. And that is one of the areas where I start making up ground over a lot of these other people. Because, yeah, sure, you're beautiful, but you're just catching bass, you're just catching trout, you're fly fishing, you're catching what I think are beautiful animals, absolutely. But there's no way to sugarcoat this. The fish I caught could eat that, right? So you have to know what people want, and if you can't get the things people want in the hierarchy that they want them, you have to find ways to make up ground. And one of the ways I do that is by routinely getting fairly extreme looking animals on camera. And that's one of the reasons why I've kind of become an alligator gar specialist. I am an alligator gar specialist. But yeah, there are absolutely people on here who will watch me catch bluegill all day. But the average person who has no interest in fishing, which is the bulk of your YouTube audience, actually, they want something worth clicking on. And if it ain't the way you look and it ain't the place you're in, it needs to be that animal that you're wrestling. Tercio says, "Are you Ricky Tercios, the fighter? Just signed up for your Patreon, man. Love your channel." Well, fantastic, man. I'm glad you did that. Thank you for the support. One of the things I mentioned, I think it's in the description of the Patreon tier, but if it's not clear, the Patreon is like direct access to me. You can message me on Patreon. I'll message you back, and I'll message you back with the vast majority of information you want to know. There's only one or two fishing spots that I've been to that because of somebody else that I'm associated with, I won't give those spots up because they're like their spots or they're a guy. Like I was with a guide in this one instance, and I would be taking business away from them. It would be like a break in trust to give this one person the spot away. But if you have questions about spots and you're on the Patreon, message me. If you have questions about tackle, bait, techniques, all that kind of stuff, just send me a direct message and I'll write you directly back. Let's see. Benzie says night. See you later, man. Thanks for coming in. Ringo Fishing says carp egg diem. Okay. Seize the day. Make your lives extraordinary. Cobra Jones says, hello again. Hope all is well. Always looking forward to watching the best fishing videos on YouTube. I appreciate that so much. And I hope it comes across that I do try to hold myself to a high standard. I think for a while I was really, really upset with myself, thinking that I had a poor standard of YouTube video. And what I realized was that no, that's not true. I was confusing aesthetics with effort. And I was thinking, like, you know what? I don't live in Australia. I don't live in Florida. Although I go to Florida frequently and I love being there. You know, I don't live in these beautiful places. That doesn't mean I'm not putting forward the effort to make really what I think is often really good content. So I feel down oftentimes on my own. Oddly enough, people like haters on YouTube just bounce right off me. Like I'm so used to that. Having a background in guest services and having a big security background, in addition to doing my education background, I've done those other fields. I am used to far more vile and threatening things being actually physically in front of me than people trying to insult me on the internet is nothing. So people on the internet don't get to me. I get to myself. And when I get compliments like that, even if they're exaggerated, like the best fishing videos on YouTube, I don't even think that. Like, have you not been on Cavi's channel? Like, I'm not that good. But it means so much to me to hear that. Thank you. Cavi really is great. Cavi's good because I have that like competitive side to me where I'm like, I'm gonna be better than this person. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna beat them. I'm gonna get better numbers than them. I'm gonna catch better fish. I'm more talented than they are. They're stupid. I'm smart. I'm better. Like I run away with it, and then I'll watch Cavi and I'll be like, oh man, he's so great. He's so awesome. Um, it's like if you ever watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that episode of the high school reunion when Charlie runs into the like his bully and instantly, and this is like they're in the 30s, and Charlie's instantly like, "You're so great, you're so cool," like, and the guy's like shit talking him. It's I feel like that. Edward C says, "Yo, bro, I was the guy that recommended that spot on your Patreon recently." I'm trying to think of what I put on Patreon last. I watched the video where you ran into the mountain lion. Yeah. And that's some wild stuff. Yeah. um, that's awesome, man. Yeah. It is a good spot. The spot you're talking about for alligator gar. It's kind of hard to get a bait to stay in place. That's one challenge I ran into. To be fair though, I've only been there twice. The first time I was there, I had some trouble getting the bait to settle because I was fishing like if the river's running past you, it does kind of get to the point where you can let a bait drift away from you downstream. If you go to the right, if you're looking at the river, you go down to the right. It might be a little bit easier to fish down there. And I was fishing like directly perpendicular to the river. But I caught some buffalo. I caught a really good gar. That's 60, 70 pounds worth of gar. And then I ran into a mountain lion in the middle of the night, which was just really terrifying. God, it was so big, so big. Um, but anyway, and then when I went back with the specific intent of finding that mountain lion and trying to get it on camera. And while I never saw the cat again, I did see his footprints, and that never made it to YouTube. But if you go to my Instagram, I've got all that stuff on Instagram. You can see the big paw prints of the mountain lion that I found and like the size comparison and stuff. So I haven't actually done a lot of fishing there. I did the fishing the first night. The second return trip was trying to get that cat on camera, and then I haven't been back. So I I might try to go back, but be careful because I went there twice, and twice I found evidence that that mountain lion hangs out there. Like that's not just a one and done. That cat lives there, so be careful. Ham Sandwich says, "What's the best line to get? Depends entirely on what you're trying to do. If you're talking about the type of fishing I do, like big bayou fishing and stuff like that, I prefer J braid. Um, I get like 80 to 100 pound J braid, and I use a top shot of 80 to 100 pound Suffolk Superior monofilament. But again, it depends entirely on what you're trying to do. That's like alligator gar, perfect. Trout, not so good." Edward C says you should definitely try that spot again, though. I was thinking about it. The thing is, that spot is on the short list of like 3 or 4 spots that I knew mentally I was sacrificing when I decided to get an actual car instead of like an SUV car. I could park it further back on that entry road, but I'd be nervous. I'd be nervous leaving it that far away in that area. Psychic Toad says, I have an orange wildlife wristband. Yeah, I still have some of those. Noob Kia TV says, man, I wish we got some snow fishing videos this last big snow. You know what? I was too busy playing in it. I loved the snow. I don't know why, but I got really emotional over getting to have snow for the first time in forever. And I wanted to keep it like just for me, honestly. I don't mean like the idea of all the snow was like nobody else can play in the snow, but I didn't want to share my experience playing in the snow because I got emotional over it, and I don't know why. It was a very needed break for me mentally. I'm not going to get into details, but for those of you who don't know, I have a lot of have a lot of issues with I have a lot of mental health challenges that are that peak in the winter, and I was having a pretty rough time when that snow came down, and it did a lot for me. Did a lot for me mentally. I really liked it. So anyway, I didn't want to connect my experience with the snow to my work, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people forget that um, fishing is recreational for most people, but for me, it's just a means to an end. I'm trying to show an animal to a camera because I love that like aquatic ecosystem so much, and I love so many of these animals that I want to show it to a camera. But because of where I live, I can't really dive into it. If I lived in some of these other areas with clearer water, I probably wouldn't be a fisherman. I probably would just scuba dive and film animals, honestly, because that's the end goal. You can't film alligator gar in this muddy water, though. If you try to dive with them, you got to catch them for a moment and bring them back up. But a lot of people forget that because fishing is such a recreational idea to people, that it's work to me. And it doesn't matter how much you love your job, your work will become your work. And you have to mentally separate yourself from it to have a healthy life. So when that snow fell, I was like, this is going to just be for me. Like I'm not going to include my work as a part of this. So that's why you didn't get to see it. Slugger says, do I like to eat any gar species? No, I am strictly catch and release with every species of gar. Tiger 11 says he lives. Hiya. Love your videos. I appreciate it. Anias Freeman says, hello, just a quick question. Where do you park to go fishing at the spot off the 69th Street in Gazan? Because you already know where it is, I'm not giving anything away. But if you look at that spot from an aerial map, you'll notice there is a what do you call it? The wastewater treatment plant. That's right there. If you look at the street that leads right up to the entrance of that, you'll notice there's like a little like 4-spot like offshoot of the road there with like the parking barriers. You can park there. Be very careful, but that spot is apparently set up as a parking zone. My buddies and I live, this is Ringo fishing. My buddies and I live near and fish a lot of the same spots. 618 does. Who is talking about him? And we make fun of him all the time because all he catches are dinks and bowfin. Yeah, I mean, he's really good at marketing himself, or at the very least, he was. I don't follow a lot of fishing YouTubers. That might surprise a lot of people, but there's only a few that I watch regularly, and he's not one of them. But nothing against him. It's just I only have so much time, and I only study a couple of people now. But yeah, he will post thumbnails of like shark hooks with like entire fish on them, being like I dropped this into the dam and caught the creature from the deep, and there's no way the fish he's catching ate that whole bait. That's just an unrelated thumbnail, I think. But then he'll catch like a bowfin that's maybe like this long, beautiful fish to be sure, channel catfish that are like this small. And that's his whole channel, which I mean, more power to him. I'm never gonna knock somebody for being really good at the marketing side of YouTube. I'm just if you're pulling it off, keep pulling it off. But yeah, I went to California and caught a great white. That's all I'm saying. Jason, is it Godet or is it like Godet, or is it like Godot? Waiting for Godot. Anyway, Jason says what's good. At the moment, my energy drink is still cold, so that's good. I really need a sponsorship from these guys. They used to work with the UFC back in 2012, I think. Like they had like Ronda Rousey and Vanderlei Silva on the cover. For those of you young whippersnappers out there who only know who Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira are, Vanderlei Silva used to be the shit in MMA. A long time ago. But yeah, I don't think they work with the UFC anymore because the UFC works with Prime Energy. Oh boy. But yeah, if any science reps are watching this, man, I drink that stuff religiously. I drink this stuff and have for years, and I'm just ready for this study to drop, to be like, science causes irreversible brain damage in 99% of consumers. Like, for anyone who's watching, like, I'm not being serious. Don't sue me, please. But I always get nervous about that because, like, what was it the other day? Like, red dye, like 40. They were like, yeah, no, stuff causes cancer. And then they were like, every other country in the world has already banned it. And it's like, well, damn it. Like, I feel like you can't have anything anymore. Everything causes some kind of deadly disease now. Anyway, now, I mean, it always did. We find out about it. What happens is we find out about a lot of stuff because we're in the information era, and we get frustrated as we find out. And because we're frustrated that we found out, we dismiss the information that we found out as opposed to getting mad at the people that sold us the thing in the first place. Did YouTube take down your short of the... no, it did not. Message me about that if you want to know more. I have something I'm doing that I'm working on. Bayou Anglers, I have your Patreon, but I don't know which one you're talking about with the 30-pound carp. Also emailed you about a fishing charter. I'll look through my emails to see, is the name... That's not my email. Ugh. I have more than one email. Sorry, I get frustrated because every time I try to bring up the email attached to the YouTube channel, the other one comes up. Is the name that you go through on your email Bayou Anglers? Send another email through that same chain. I'm trying to find it. I'm not seeing it. So yeah, send me that again, and I'll go back and I'll make sure I respond to it. Because again, I apologize if you guys send me messages and I don't respond to them. It's not because I'm like looking at your message being like, I ain't tired of this guy. It's probably because it's buried in a bunch of other messages, including stuff I sent myself. Which I'm looking at my email right now, and like the last 10 emails were all things I sent myself because I send that sounds a lot more depressing when I say it that way. For context, I will edit images for like thumbnails and stuff and send it back and forth to different devices to do things on. So I have a lot of emails from myself with like photographs in them. Cool Joe Scott waves. Ringo fishing. A drone shot time lapse of gator guard gulping air in a hole you're fishing would be cool. It would. It's one of the things that's easier to do when you have help because, for one, a drone only has so much time to fly. But also, when I know the fish is there, my attention is entirely on like I need to get that fish. So operating a drone to observe the fish's natural behavior, I would have to figure out a way I could do that without cutting into the time necessary to use to catch the fish. Oh yeah, I just saw your email pop up, by the way. Let's see. Secret 7, Muddy Water Bank Side Monster. Muddy Water Bank Side Monsters Great Channel. If you're talking about me, thank you. If you're suggesting another YouTube channel, I'll look it up. I couldn't tell from that sentence which one. If you were saying there's somebody's channel is called Muddy Water Bankside Monsters, and that's a great channel, or I catch monsters in the bankside of muddy water, and I have a great channel. Sterling Scruggs, do you ever flathead catfish? I'm new to the Houston area, would love to see it. So that is exactly what I was doing the other night when I said I was doing a video that I had to scrap because of a personal emergency that came up. That's what I was working on. So I've got to go back to that. Flathead don't respond well to the cold, though. Blues are fine with the cold, but flathead are a little bit more sensitive to it. So I have to wait a few days for the temperature to kind of swing back up, and then I intend to go do some flathead stuff. Flathead says not flathead. Flama says you have to get the sonar lens to see the mountain lion sonar lens. Do you mean the what do you call it? Heat. What do you call that? I'm drawing blanks. I'm getting tired. Clearly, like when you have like the heat image lens. Edward C says I did all the road construction there and got to fish there every day after work and see gar every single day. And yeah, the bait definitely didn't drift down. Just kept my line tight. Well, I might have to go back and give that a second shot then, because I do remember liking that area. It's easy to film when you can, again, this goes back to the car I have now. May not be able to get down there all the way, but it is nice. It is such a nice mental break when you can get your car right next to the spot you're fishing. It is so rare that I'm able to do that. When I can do it, it's like, it's a stress. You guys got to think. And if you've fished in some of the areas I have, you probably have thought about this before. But so often when I'm out filming, especially when it's some of the sketchier spots, in the city, I am constantly thinking, like, how is my car doing? Is there someone messing with my car? I have a whole video that I'm working on right now for Patreon is how to travel and fish, like how to use your car to basically how to live out of your car and fish. I'm working on a video for Patreon on that right now. And a huge part of that is like preparation to make your car one that nobody is going to want to break into. So yeah, when I go places and my car is like, half a mile away, I'm kind of constantly thinking about it. Like, I hope it's fine. So when I can get to a spot like you're describing, the mountain lion spot, I got my car down there, like right next to the water, and it was amazing. Especially after I saw a mountain lion, and I was like, I'm getting back in the car. Splashdown 23 says, get a Starlink and do a fishing stream. So I've talked about this before. And again, I might cave and do a fishing stream while I'm out fishing if I think the internet wants it enough. But typically speaking, remember how I said before that you got to be a little bit of Don Draper to make this work? You're trying to sell a product. One of the keys to selling a product that is primarily visual is you don't let people see it until they pay a ticket for it, right? Imagine if, I was advertising a movie I wanted you to go see in the theater, and I said, It's really good. Watch the movie. Now, don't you want to go see it in the theater? You'd be like, no, I just watched it. That's kind of the problem that streaming while fishing gives. Let's say I was doing a live stream while fishing, and I had, live stream, you only get a fraction of your subscriber base. Even if you're a huge creator, you'll see guys with like 1 million subscribers do a live stream, and they'll get a few thousand people on there. That's just the way it works. But let's say I get a big live stream, and I get a couple of thousand people on there, which I've done, and I caught a tremendous fish. Let's say it was like that fish that changed my life. Let's say it was that giant gar. When I actually take that footage and do something with it, number one, that footage is going to be tremendously. There's going to be a huge sacrifice in footage quality based on the fact that this is camera number one, right? So everything I'm doing, all of my actions, all my maneuvers, all of my effort is based upon the stream. So I'm trying to do everything in a way that is presented on camera A. But for the YouTube video, this is not going to work very well because you've got a 16:9 format for YouTube, which is about like that. Out of this whole frame, that is about 16:9 right there. So that's the frame you're cutting out, which means that for the fish, if I was going to use any of that footage for another video, I would have to focus on camera B, which would sacrifice the live stream. So not only would it give my hand away, basically, you would see the film, the final product before it was in the film, but the film wouldn't be very good. And when the film was released, several thousand people who I would need to be those initial clicks to get the video going, they wouldn't click on it because you'd already seen it. So that's why I don't do a lot of like streaming while I'm fishing. I might do it eventually, but there's a reason I haven't yet. Bayou Anglers, I got your email. I see it. I'm gonna have a look at it in just a moment. So don't worry, I've got it this time. Ringo Fishing, I'd say he is probably the top YouTuber as far as consistently catching big blues and cats year round. I'm not sure who we're talking about. Bayou Vision. What is that? Seinfeld Vision. Seinfeld Vision. Save the cheerleader. Save the world. That's a 30 Rock joke, by the way. Bayou Vision is how high. Still hoping you bring in that elusive Bayou bull shark. Yeah, I am too. I know about where they should be. It's just a question of hooking into one. Flama says night vision lens, not sonar. Yeah. I had a feeling you were trying to getting at that, or like the heat seek. What do you call it? The one where you can see the thermal imaging. That's what I was trying to think of that word for like 10 minutes straight. Like thermal imaging. Yeah, something like that. Infrared, yeah. By Ringo Fishing says infrared. Psychic Say Toad says thermal. Yeah, then you guys all got to that word faster than I did. Nice Freeman says, thank you for answering my question. I love your content. You have been very inspiring to me and to my kids. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me that I've been able to have that impact on anyone. Ringo Fishing says, fishing streams are good. Epic Catfish does them and basically pays for his trip from donors. Yeah, that's something I haven't really looked into doing. I should. But basically, you see a lot of chats where guys are going on and they're like, oh, thank you, so-and-so, for the super chat question. And those are people donating money. I don't do that. And I might look into doing activating that kind of stuff on chats. Just not at the moment. I wouldn't do it, like you're saying. I wouldn't do it in a chat like this, I don't think. I would do it in a chat where I was maybe doing something active or something like that. Ringo Fishing says, psychic, you're right. Guess I was, yeah, infrared. Let's see, Ringo Fishing. Big River Pursuits. Either you skipped my comment or I was shadowed. No, I'm shadow ban you. I must have missed it because I'm trying to go down a chain of comments. I probably just skimmed over on accident. Yeah, there's another channel. Who was it? There was a guy that, I cannot remember his name. He was a YouTuber who I was following for a while, and he has really good catfish content on there. Can't remember. It's It's gonna frustrate me. But yeah, Dolly does want my attention. She's on her back right now getting tummy scratches, which is like her favorite thing. When we go fishing, says Brad Hilton, as probably the guy who does that channel. Oh, that's your friend. Okay, cool. That's neat. I'm trying to remember who the guy I was talking about was. It's making me angry that I can't remember it. Because he reached out to me. He was like, "I love your channel, man." Like, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool because I like yours as well." And I am drawing a blank. It's gonna frustrate me. But anyway, yeah, cool. Let me see if there's anything I was gonna say of importance to the YouTube channel before we wrap things up. Yeah, just I'm just kind of waiting on the weather to get a little bit better for some of the videos I want to film. There are things you can film in cold weather in Texas, in this dreary weather. Carp fishing is one that's kind of an easy go-to. But I already have so much footage shot for, what do you call it? A GAR video. I just need it to warm up just enough to finish off that video because it's a good video. And then I have a couple of really big projects and really cool, like, not the typical format of like I'm going to go out and catch a fish in this location on video, like actual like well formatted voiced over information projection style videos that I'm working on, that I'm going to start mixing into things that I'm quite proud of, like the ideas that I've come up with these, that they're going to present. So I've got a lot of stuff that I'm working on, and this weather is just messing with me. I really need it to just kind of pick a lane, as they say. Be cold or be warm. One or the other I can work. It's when it bounces to and from one and the other, that's what messes me up. Secret 7 says, what's my go-to baits for catfish or cut baits for gar? Depends on where I'm fishing, but I kind of rotate between the same. If I'm fishing within the city, I typically favor mullet. If I'm fishing outside of the city or bigger water sources like rivers and things like that, I typically favor buffalo and carp. And tilapia are good for either, but typically where I fish with mullet, I'll fish with tilapia. Bless you. And carp and buffalo for the other ones. All right. Just remember, guys, the video idea. What are you sneezing for? My dog is sneezing. The video idea that we're going to do is going to be a collection of a couple of spots that get a lot of votes or fit the bill, basically. If you have a spot, whether it's a location by name, like a park or a lake or a river, or if you have a location by coordinates and you're like, I want to see you fish this spot on YouTube, I'm going to make a video where that is the entire point. I will go through a couple of different spots. It will be a pretty big video. So send me those locations to wildlifefishingshow@gmail.com. If you want to make sure that I see it, you can comment it here as well. You can comment it on the original post. Include what kind of fish you're most interested in seeing from that zone. I don't want you to give me a zone that has really good, like you want to know what the carp is like, and I go for catfish. Then it defeats the purpose of what you were asking for. So let me know the spot, the fish you want to see, and specify if it's something that you want to keep secret, because that will influence the way I probably do the format of the video. Although at the moment I am leaning towards the more public format, like actually saying where I am. So just keep that in mind, but specify and I'll go from there. All right, let's see if there's anything I'm missing. All right, I think we are going to call it there. Send me the spots that you are interested in and keep your eyes out because I am desperately trying to get stuff done in this cold weather. This weather is not being good to me. But you guys have a great night, and I will catch y'all later.